It's morning. It's a show. Sometimes it's about woodworking. It's the Woodworking Morning Show.
Yo, baby! Good morning, everybody.
I feel like I was laughing like Muttley.
Yeah. Okay, well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's the morning show. I'm Marc.
And I'm Nicole.
We're in a special kind of happy mood today.
Oh, we had a great day yesterday. I can't remember the last time that day was so great.
Yeah, well, pre-March,
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, it was actually a nice day out with the family. So
Yep.
That's what we did. We went to a little pumpkin patch.
I just needed to buy some
nursery.
I wanted to buy, we have this local nursery and they sell pumpkins cheap. So I'm going to get some pumpkins for the kids.
Gotta love them cheap pumpkins.
Cheap pumpkins.
Now the whole back of the car is
Loaded down with
pumpkins.
tiny little pumpkins.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm Marc.
We already did that.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did.
I don't think we did. I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewind it and I'm going to double check. And when I find out that I'm wrong,
The chat room is going to support me because I remember saying,
Didn't we
I'm
introduce
Nicole.
ourselves?
Yes, what's wrong with you? We don't know what to do when we don't have our kids.
Nicole, I'm getting older. Memory isn't quite what it used to be. Okay, well, hey,
Hey.
good morning. Let's
Yeah.
do some woodworking questions. We
Well-
also have a couple things to, just little announcements and thank yous as well.
Oh yeah, Brian W. or Byron in the chat room just said, just purchased the SketchUp tutorial. Today is the last day for the discount.
Today is the last day. Don't
It
miss
is.
it. I'm actually, after we're done here, I got to go to the computer and I got to push all of the videos live. So all of the videos in that series, boom, will be ready for you. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Did you do the reminder on Instagram like I asked you to?
No. I was preparing for
We're
this.
terrible.
I was preparing for the morning show, Nicole. This doesn't just happen on its own.
So my suggestion
Yeah.
is to let people know today's the last day on Instagram. And then,
Well, let's do that.
okay.
But this is the morning show.
So we're reminding you too,
Yeah.
unless
Okay.
you're watching it later.
I also want to thank some people who helped us out. People who went to patreon.com/woodwhisperer or right on YouTube. If you are on a desktop, you'll see that little join button there. That's actually their membership feature. It's a lot like Patreon. It's a way for you to support the show, help us do what we do if you like what we do here. And we always appreciate that. I want to thank Thomas Bessman, Kim Erickson, Chuck Wells, Fleur de Lune.
I want to say her name.
Fleur de Lune.
Fleur de Lune.
Yes.
Oh, that's a beautiful name.
Justin Priest. So thank you so much, everybody, for helping us out. We appreciate it. And you also help us out just by being here, watching, participating. I got questions from people who were on Patreon. Nicole's going to get questions directly live from the chat room. So,
I sit there and I look at the chat room and I say, is that a question or is that a joke?
or is that a
I don't
question
know.
for Marc, or is that a question for someone else? Okay, so we got the teriyaki
Yes,
sauce. You guys
Doug.
remember the teriyaki thing?
Doug, you're amazing.
Yeah.
I got this box. I opened it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's in here? And it's like so packaged so well and so like
Well, because
bubbly.
it was a big ass glass
It's
jar.
a mason jar.
A
of,
glass mason jar full of teriyaki
so,
sauce.
Doug, I hope you're in the chat room because I said, I don't think it needs to be refrigerated. And Mark's like, no, I think we need to refrigerate it. So we refrigerated it.
Well, I refrigerated it after I opened it, too.
Yeah.
What I didn't tell you was while you were out the other day with Ava, you guys went somewhere, I had to make some lunch. So I just grabbed a frozen salmon fillet from the freezer, thawed it out real quick, and cooked it up. And I made myself a little salmon teriyaki with white rice for lunch.
I saw the rice. I wasn't sure what was going on
Check
there.
this out. Basically, I did a quick marinade on it, right? And then I baked it at 400 degrees, right? And then it starts to caramelize a little bit. But I took the marinade, the leftover marinade from the sauce, I put it in a saucepan. I reduced it down to a thick, syrupy consistency. Holy crap. It was like browned liquid crack.
Doug is in the chat room. He says, it doesn't, but that's okay. So I was
Doug.
right. No. I was right.
Let me ask you this, Doug. Will it last longer in the refrigerator?
Yeah.
Because it's practically like a gallon of teriyaki sauce.
It's amazing, yeah.
The longer it lasts, the better for me.
So you want to read what he, because it's nice that he sent that to you.
It was delicious, though. He says, I grew up in Hawaii and I learned this teriyaki recipe when I was 18. 53 now, and have made it for many years. A friend of mine was joining the Marines, and his family had a luau for him.
Oh, cool.
It was the best teriyaki I ever tasted. I asked his mom for the recipe. I have made this in restaurants that I've worked at in Oregon, and customers would bring me empty bottles to fill. It's a simple recipe. I don't want to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Thank you, Doug.
yeah, thank you, Doug. It was delicious. And I did face my fears of food from strange places. I don't mean that you're strange. I mean not here in my house. That's what I mean. I'm kind of scared of the world.
Yeah.
It's all very frightening to me.
Hey, we just got a super chat from Michael Donovan.
Michael Donovan. Can I get a Legend Woodcraft shout out? Well, sure. You just got one.
Woohoo! I think he has a question for us too on Patreon.
He does.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not going to answer it.
No?
Well, his question was another. Remember how last week we had the guy who cut down some trees and was going to get rich on selling slabs?
Yeah.
It's another pricing question.
Yeah.
And Michael, unfortunately, that's not my forte. Like for me, I price things the way anyone would price things. That's to look at the market, see what the market will bear, look at where your material falls within that hierarchy, and try to price it that way.
You're answering his question.
Well, I'm giving him the most generic advice possible. But really, honestly, it's tough because it's so regional. Sometimes the market is so saturated with this type of thing that it's hard to sell, right? So
It's okay. I have a backup question from him.
Okay.
He messaged it to
like
me.
a good backup question, Nicole.
Did you
Oh,
want
we
to
have
say
to-
thank you to this is Art. I had an Uncle Art.
Yeah. I had a class in school named Art.
From barmillsmodels.com. What? You had a what? Sorry.
You totally missed it.
Because I'm focused on reading
I said
art.
I had a class in school named Art.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good joke, I thought.
It's okay. It's a dad
Me
joke.
personally.
Show the cool model that he sent us, because we're going to do this with the Mateo art. Encloses a wooden model. Let's see how good you really are. This
Look at that.
this has got to be a heck of a lot easier than a guild project.
Yeah, I would say so.
Oh,
Got a whole
thank you,
bunch of them
Art.
here.
Is his what? So I'm guessing he makes these because it's barmillsmodels.com.
Bar Mills Scale Model
Yeah.
Works.
That's really cool.
Love me a good scale model.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun with that. You know what? Ava might even build it.
Yeah.
She's getting into lots of building.
See how finicky it is. Sometimes a model like that might take a little bit more
Finesse.
finesse and
Yeah.
dexterity.
There you go. So thank you, Art, for that.
Colorado
Thank you, Doug.
Mohawk. Just would like to say that it was a great joke. So,
Thanks, Colorado
Thank you,
Mohawk.
Colorado Mohawk.
Don't encourage it.
Now you got me wanting a mohawk, though. I could be a Colorado Mohawk.
Yeah, you could.
Wouldn't look very good, but I could. Okay, so what else? Oh, T-shirts.
Oh,
Guys,
yeah.
T-shirts. It's been so long since we've sold T-shirts. Just with my mom moving, bouncing from Arizona to Jersey, back to Denver.
Yeah.
We finally are getting T-shirts made, and not just a couple T-shirts, guys. Look at this. Hold on. Look at this. Oh, where'd you go, Nicole?
I'm a T-shirt.
Look at me, I'm a T-shirt. TWWstore.com is where you're going to want to go to get these. We have a Wood Whisperer T-shirt, a Wood Whisperer Guild T-shirt, which also says
Nobody
member
wants that.
on the sleeve. Nobody wants what?
We want the woodworking morning show shirt.
Oh, I see. There's the Wood Talk shirt, which you can tell is kind of in that classic baseball all-star logo. It's actually called, you'll see right above the Wood Talk word, it says Inside Joke All-Stars.
Nice.
And then, of course, the Woodworking Morning Show. That's the shirt that I have on now. Actually, I don't know if the color is going to be exactly the same. This is the shirt Nicole made for me, but it is the same logo with the little Colorado sun there peeking over the mountain. TWWstore.com is where you can go for that. And I will also mention that we have a bundle. That picture you see there represents the full bundle
If you can't
of all four
decide,
shirts.
right?
And you get 10% off if you use that bundle. Okay.
There you go.
So these are on pre-order right now. You have until the end of this month to get your pre-order in, and then they will ship late November. Plenty of time for Christmas, but we will be carrying these shirts later. But right now, just a pre-order. Okay. And if you do place that order, try to just buy the shirts. Don't combine it with something else, because then it confuses the shipping, and my mom gets all upset about it, and it's a whole thing. And then I get texts telling me, I can't believe this person didn't read what we wrote. I'm like, well, Mom, people don't read.
Yep.
People do not read.
We don't. I've been guilty of that too.
I don't read. Every time you text me, I'm like, I don't know what that is. That's a string of characters
I was
mean nothing to me.
I was supposed to bring your mom eggs, and you didn't read it.
Yeah.
Shush.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
Are you watching a show in the middle of the show?
I'm not watching the show.
So meta.
It just started.
You should send me a super chat so we could talk. Okay. Yoso wrote in. He says, after a couple of years using your miter saw station, do you find yourself using both T-tracks? Would you put in both if you rebuilt the miter saw station today? I probably would. Yeah, I like having both. The idea with the double track is that I could use one that's in line with the work or put something behind the fence location so that I could have like a flip down stop, or I could actually use them both together. And that's actually what I'm doing right now. So sometimes if you got a big 8-quarter board, right, and you're sliding that across, it doesn't take much for that big heavy board to just smack whatever stop you have in place. Just kind of smack it out of the way or maybe even bend something. So it is nice to be able to clamp on both of those T-tracks with a little wood bar across, and that's not going anywhere, right? So that's actually what I'm doing right now. So I think if I did it, I would, because it's in the long run, T-track isn't the cheapest thing in the world, but it's not that expensive in the long run. And it's like, put it in now, it's there if you need it. If you don't use it, no big deal.
Somebody's asking what style of T-shirts. I know we put the Bella canvas in the stylish fit, but isn't the classic fit Gildan or something?
I forget. I think so.
I think so.
Yeah,
so
my mom would know.
Yeah, it needs to go in there.
Well, so I kind of did those as well as I could, but sometimes. What is that? Why does that buy now button look like that?
I don't know.
We got to get rid of that.
I don't know.
What am I doing? Okay, sorry. Andrew had a question. Andrew Slaughterback says, I know it's probably very dependent on lots of different factors, but are there any rules of thumb for acceptable moisture content for wood before using? Typically purchasing kiln-dried wood, so maybe not a real factor, but I do like to check before I use it in a project or it has sat in my shop for a few weeks or years and while I'm milling down the parts. Okay, so general consensus, amongst woodworkers, if you're working with kiln-dried stock, is you're looking at between 8 and 11%. Some people get pickier about it and they want it to be specifically, they don't touch it till it's 8% or 7%, right? But within that range is generally considered acceptable. I think most of us, if you're buying from a reliable source, you can usually just buy kiln-dried stock, and if you let it sit in your shop for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, if you just don't have time to get to it, you probably don't have to check the moisture content, but I see where you're going. You just kind of want to be aware of what's happening, right? That could be super useful information depending on the time of year. So I would say aim for that 8 to 11% range, and you're probably fine. The key, though, is if you are in a place like, let's say you're in Arizona or even Denver, where it gets drier, most of the time, you're going to find that the wood, once it sits around for a while, is on the lower end of that scale. But if you're in a place that's super humid, maybe down in the southeast, you may wind up at being on the higher end of that scale. So it's kind of important to know what your shop general humidity causes the wood's moisture content to be over time, and that's the number you're aiming for.
Your mom's in the chat, and she said the classic is equal to Gildan. We might want to put that in there.
What's equal to Gildan mean?
The shirts.
Right.
The type of shirt.
Oh, she's using equals
Yes.
as a shorthand.
Yes.
Because I'm like, it's like Gildan? Like, is that what we're supposed to
That's
say?
the brand that is the shirts.
Well,
Yes.
it's not a Rolex,
Yeah.
but it's like a Rolex, Nicole. So it is Gildan.
William Nelson has a question. Do
Yeah.
you have any resources or books to recommend for building person doors, i.e. bedroom, bathroom doors, not cabinet doors?
Nope.
Sorry.
I don't.
That was easy.
That's
Nope.
a very easy question.
Maybe the chat room might have some
Yeah,
suggestions.
if you got a suggestion for entry doors and interior doors, a book or resource for building those, that would
Or even a website.
a big help to who?
That's William.
Okay, William. Hopefully someone can help you out with
I
that.
need to put my glasses on, I think.
You probably should. You know what? They make things clearer, Nicole.
Yeah.
Especially
Things are
when you
starting to
have
get
to
a little
read.
blurry.
I've been rounding a lot. Oh, this is Corey Pelton. He says, I've been rounding a lot of mortises, and the setup time is taking forever for each one. Do you tend to make a template to bump your router against, or do you reset your limits every time per mortise, or eyeball each one? I'm thinking a quick template is probably the route to go, but before I take the plunge, this is like, I don't know if he did this on purpose, but this really is kind of loaded with puns, right? I'm thinking a quick template is probably the route to go, but before I take the plunge, right? That's how we probably.
I think he meant it that way.
I'd
too.
like to hear how you would tackle lots of repeated mortises. Okay, well, if I'm doing lots of repeated
It's a
mortises,
bit troubling.
I missed that part. Come on, that has to be Corey being slick.
Yeah.
I love it. I do love it. If I'm doing a lot of mortises, a lot of times I'm going to make a template. If it's the same mortise or similar size mortises where I can kind of adjust my template to make it a little bit easier. But if we're just talking about a bunch of mortises and a couple of boards, and I mean, it just depends on how many we're talking about here, most of the time I will not make a template just because the start and stop points are all I need. So if you've got an edge guide on your router, you've got your depth set, those are two things that are locked in position. Once you have it, you don't have to change it. All you really need to know is where to start and stop that mortise. And most of the time, the start and stop points are not so critical that like they have to be dead on. If you go a little bit over your line, not that big of a deal. So me personally, I just go with start and stop lines and then call it a day. But if I have a ton of similar size mortises where the mortise size is critical or it's like a through mortise, well, in that case, I definitely am building templates, right? So I think it will go a lot faster if you aren't building templates for everything that you do and just get really good at lining up with your pencil lines.
Marc Nyland says, why do you ignore melamine as a building material?
The same reason most other people do. I mean, melamine is a very specific material for very specific uses. So I would never use melamine until I had a project that called for melamine, right?
What project would call for melamine?
I mean, if you were making cabinets that you didn't want to have to worry about finishing, like garage cabinets, it's a good material for. You could use it as a sacrificial surface, like the top of an outfeed table because it's nice and slippery. But ultimately, I don't have much calling for something like melamine.
I think he's joking too. It's Marc
I don't know.
Nyland.
Well, you didn't read it like it was a joke.
I know, but I can't read funny.
Sarcasm?
I just know Marc. He's in the chat a lot.
Who is he?
Marc Nyland.
Okay.
He's been around. I think we've even met. I think you live
Yeah,
in
but
Colorado Springs, right?
It's a legit question.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, you're just confusing me, Nicole.
But I think he knows you.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, Marc, that you meant a little joke in that.
Okay, Corey's got a question. It's second part of his question. He says, I'm working with sapele for the first time, and it's burning a lot more than most other hardwoods I've worked with. I'm running my router at 3.5 speed. He's got the Festool OF1400 with a 1/2-inch 2-flute spiral compression bit. That seems to be the sweet spot for producing chips and not dust. But I still get some smoking embers after light passes. It's a bit troubling.
Troubling. Troublesome.
Okay, that's why I didn't read that, because that wasn't on the other paragraph. Okay. So I thought about this a little bit. Now, sapele is a pretty hard wood, and if you go too slow, you are definitely going to get burning. So I like the fact that you slowed the bit down a little bit, but you also need to make sure that your feed rate is, don't go dangerously fast, but fast enough that it doesn't have time to burn. If you're still getting burning with what you're doing, the thing that, and I kind of had to think about this for a little bit, the compression bit is the thing that has me a little bit concerned, right? So a compression bit, if you think about a spiral bit, the spirals can either go, this way, or they can go this way. And one is an upcut spiral, the other is downcut. So if you have a spiral bit in a router and you're using an upcut, think of the spiral being as something that wants to pull those chips out of the hole. The down spiral pushes the chips down into the hole, which can lead to more burning and heat, right? Things that he's dealing with here. A compression bit is like, if you, in the simplest terms, if you take the up spiral and put it on the bottom of the bit, and then you take the down spiral and put it on the top of the bit, so they're kind of going toward each other. There's strategic reasons to do this, but in his case, it seems like that is just going to really compound the heat and friction and pushing those the little pieces of wood and the shavings and the dust, kind of keeping them in the middle of the bit, which I feel like if there's no escape route for that dust, you're going to wind up getting extra heat. So I actually think what you're experiencing right now, sapele certainly is a hard wood that can burn if you're not careful, but I think that compression bit might be working against you. What you probably want to go toward is a simple spiral upcut bit. Get the dust as much as possible out of that hole, give it a place to go, and then that might give you better results.
Let's see. There was something I was going to do. Kevin Windsor, thank you for the super chat. If you have a question, let me know.
Kevin, thank you.
Marc Nyland, we've met him.
Yeah.
He's not in Colorado Springs. He's in Fort Collins, and he did mean it as a joke.
Okay.
So.
Okay. It's good. It's fine.
Oh, I'm gonna read.
I need some emoji
Yes.
to help me understand jokes, guys. Give me them emojis.
Michael Donovan does have a question. He bought a drum sander, a used Delta 1836, and wants to go through it to ensure it's tuned. Yes, I wasted about 3 rolls of paper before figuring things out. Seems okay. Any pointers would be awesome.
You know, drum sanders, there's a lot of different ways that you could tackle it. Sometimes people will just take the drum, loosen it up, put the drum on top of something that's, maybe like a 2x4 or a scrap piece of oak or something. I like, rather than a 2x4, I like something that's got some, firmness to it. So a scrap piece of oak is fine. Make sure it's nice and milled flat and parallel. You drop that down, then you could bring the drum right on top of it and hold that drum in position, then tighten the drum down. That is the quickest sort of no frills way to get the adjustment done, but it's usually not perfect. So at that point, you could, if you really wanted to get really down and dirty with this, is get some kind of a gauge under there. And actually gauge it and see if you could tell where the drum is on one side, then slide it to the other side and kind of make your adjustments until you get that thing level perfectly with the table. It's just a tedious process. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll use the block of wood trick to get pretty close. Then I will wrap it with sandpaper. And then as I'm running pieces through, I can use a pencil on a piece, either put a wide piece that goes all the way through the whole drum or take a narrow piece and just kind of move it and see if you can get the same amount of sanding on both sides, right? So if you run it through the right side and you erase all your pencil lines, put the pencil lines back, run it through the right side again, and then you start to see the pencil lines stay, right? Because you sanded thoroughly enough. Now take that piece, put the pencil lines on it again, take that piece to the left side. What happens? Does it start to just scratch a little bit? Is it completely ignoring the surface, or does it dig in? If it digs in, you know that side is low. So it's a little bit of a trial and error process. It's not that difficult. Also, not my favorite thing to do.
Hey,
What?
not my favorite. Tyler Levins is a Patreon member, and I forgot to give him a shout out. He had a shout out coming to him, and he wanted me to shout out his woodworking Instagram account, Desert Fox Woodworking, which I'll put a link in the chat in the show notes. And I just want to say, Tyler, you have an adorable little girl.
Oh, look at her.
Aw. Adorable.
I thought she had bunny ears, but it looks like it's just something
I think it's behind her.
Okay.
It looks like our collection of little cars for kids.
Yep, little battery-powered cars.
So yeah, check them out. Desert Fox WW is the Instagram handle if you're looking for a woodworker to follow on Instagram.
Cool. I'm always looking for more
There you go.
woodworkers to follow, Nicole.
Well then, guess what? Follow back. Boom. You're following Tyler right now.
I'm a follow back boy.
I have control of. I can get into his Instagram account too.
Yeah, you can. as evidenced by some of those newsletter things you post.
I know.
You ever see something that looks like, this
That
little
does
big
a little
Marc
bit.
posted
It
that?
was probably
It's
me.
probably Nicole.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeffrey Smith. I understand that your space in Denver is smaller than your previous shop. What lessons did you learn adapting to your new, smaller space? Well, I learned that I can't roller skate in my shop anymore. That's a bummer. 1,800 square
Mateo
feet.
can't come in here and roller skate.
Yeah, 1,800 square feet was a lot of space. I actually did not, once I got all the crap out of here and started to get some organization, I found that reducing my shop by, about half wasn't that bad. I mean, I got a lot of stuff in this shop. I had to, I think the biggest lesson is like what tools are absolutely essential and which ones are just nice to have. So something like the big floor standing hollow chisel mortiser, well, maybe I can't have the floor standing version anymore. For as much as I use it, the benchtop model was more than enough. So I was able to sell that one, downgrade to a benchtop model, and it works fine. So I think that was one of the big lessons, is learning what things you can get away with bringing up off the floor when floor square footage is at a premium. A drill press might be another example of that, right? If you have a floor standing drill press, it's nice to have, but if you don't use it that often and you don't use all that capacity, then maybe you can get away with putting a benchtop drill press in place, and then you don't take up floor space, or you put it on a countertop or something, right? Which is already consuming floor space. Outside of that, I think I actually am more efficient in the smaller space, so I kind of like it. Having extra space is great, but I think the only places I really miss the extra space are wood storage, right? For plenty of plywood storage, plenty of solid wood storage. Well, now that's a whole thing. I've got a shed that has some material in it, and I've got some material in the shop, and it just takes up so much room but I really, wish I had more room for that.
Hey, I forgot to mention, those of you that follow Marc's barbecue channel, TWWBBQ,
Yeah.
I've uploaded the first 4 videos to Amazon Prime. So there's if you say the Wood Whisperer barbecue, boom, it's on your TV just like that.
What about TWW barbecue?
They wouldn't let me do that.
No?
Nope. They wouldn't let me do, in fact, it stopped it from publishing because of the abbreviation. Are the kids
They don't
home?
like initialisms? No, that's probably the neighbor's kids.
Kids home?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't like the TWW or the BBQ. I had to spell out barbecue.
It's lame.
Just.
Whatever. Now it's a super giant
But now
long
people
title.
can just say the Wood Whisperer barbecue and it goes right to it. So.
Okay, Jason Stromberg wants to know, are you going to help Matt and Lindsay move? Hell no. Aren't they moving next year?
Yeah.
I don't think they're moving right away.
Moving right away.
They're going to do some renovations and add on. I asked him if he doesn't mind to make sure he gets the right color for my room that he's building over there.
What color did you ask for?
Something earth tone and peaceful and tranquil.
Our daughter really hates the color of our house. She tells me on many occasions how it's too brown. She doesn't like it.
She should have seen what Arizona was like. Every house
Everything
is brown.
tan.
Everything is just tan, right?
Tom, Weatherhead, this is a cup, not a Lego cup. It's just one of those Color Me Mine cups that my son did when he was like 4 or 5. And I found it in his room, and I was like, I'm gonna
use that.
I'm gonna use that cup.
Nice.
So there you go.
Okay, so we got a question from Kim. Kim was one of the people who I shout-outed.
Oh, Kim!
Shouted out. Yeah, I shouted out at the beginning of the show. Kim says, I'm new to your channel. I live in Tasmania,
Wow.
Australia. Most likely fast asleep when the show airs, but hey, I might get up at 2:30 a.m. I'm currently planning to build a workbench assembly table with and incorporate my job site table saw. I'm looking at using MDF for the top. The dimensions are 1200 by 1200. It's about 4 by 4 for us Americans. I want to add a vise and dog holes down one side, so I was thinking about making half of the bench thicker. That would be about 2 sheets of 600 by 1200 MDF glued to the top sheet. Do you see any problem doing it this way, or should I make it all 3 inches thick?
So she's from Tasmania.
Yeah.
Is Tasmania small? Because I follow a comedian,
It's about the size of Jersey, Nicole.
Hannah Gadsberry. I'm wondering if is it so small that you would know her? Anyway,
Probably not.
you should probably answer a question.
But just for the, if anybody lives in London, so does my brother, so you might run into him. You never know.
You never know.
If you see him,
it could
say
be a
hi.
small town and like everybody knows everybody, kind of thing.
Sure.
Now I'm curious to learn more about Tasmania.
Okay, well, Google it. See what happens.
will.
What's the population in Tasmania? Okay. Normally I want my tops to be all one thickness. If it's not one thickness, things just kind of get more complicated because you either have to add those sheets above, so now it's kind of in the way, or in your case, you're probably going to have to add the sheets below, right? Because you need that big work surface to be flush with the top of your table saw. So then when you are making the cabinet that supports all this material, what's happening there? You have to have some kind of an offset to allow for that drop down in thickness. Also, in working against this, so let me step back. Normally I would say, yeah, just do the whole thing. It's not that big of a space. It's only 4 by 4. Go for one thickness. I think you'll be happier in the end. But my problem with this particular project is you're using MDF. That's 3 inches of MDF. That's heavy. That's really heavy. And I don't think you're going to like doing that. Even just moving that thing around, I hope you got help, because a 4 by 4, 3 inch thick piece of MDF is going to be a beast to move around. So I am definitely favoring the side of things that says go with the, just one section being thicker, but you're going to have to think how to accommodate that in the base that holds this top. And it's still going to be heavy. Not as heavy as the full thing, but it's still going to be pretty darn heavy. So MDF is not necessarily my favorite material for something that you're going to be putting hardware into, like dogs or vices. You may consider moving to something like plywood. I think that would do a better job of sort of resisting the metal parts and the screws and just giving you more bite on those things. But there may be reasons you're going with MDF that I don't know about. So
Kevin Windsor did a super chat earlier.
Yep.
Here's his question.
Okay.
Trying to cut a bevel on the end of a board with a sliding miter saw by tipping the head. The cut comes out curved, not square to the fence. I'm thinking The blade is deflecting because it's entering on the edge. Capex with a festool blade, maybe a stiffer blade, question mark? Right here.
Yeah, let me reread that.
I hate when I put all this effort to pronouncing every word correctly and you still have to reread it.
So he's got the capex with the festool
Yeah.
blade. Well, that I don't know. It could. I mean, certainly a different blade might help. My first capex. This one doesn't seem to do it, but the first capex before I had sold it, when I would do a wide cut, we're not even talking about any kind of weird bevels or anything like that. Just a wide cross cut. I would take that end piece, and while it was generally square to the edge, if you actually hold it up and look at the light, I would actually see a little bit of a dish in the middle of the workpiece, and I never knew how to resolve that. It was just something that I lived with. That's kind of sounds like what you're experiencing there. Now, why it only occurs on the bevel, I don't know. But I mean, if the workpiece is clamped and you know that that's not moving, and you're taking your time and letting it clear the chips, I don't know. I honestly don't know. What you also may try doing is sneaking up on it a little bit, right? So you make your first cut and then nudge it maybe another 64th of an inch and try to make that cut and see if it cleans it up a little bit. But I don't really have a great answer for you, man. Sorry.
See, I got a question here from Mr. Posky. I have a radial arm saw, and the dust collection only works if I push the saw through the workpiece. But everything I see says pulling the saw is the proper method to making a cut. Your thoughts?
I think safety counts more than the dust collection.
Yeah.
So use the radial arm saw exactly as it was designed to be used. If the dust collection is not as effective, then that's just something you're going to have to live with, or possibly modify the dust collection in some way. But that's very dependent on the saw and your ability to make little dust shrouds and things like that. But
those radial arms all scare me. I don't like the look of them.
Used properly,
Yeah,
they're fine.
I know, but they still just. I've watched too many scary movies.
I guess so. You must have. But yes, cutting direction and feed direction on a radial arm saw is, I think, the most important element of using it. So it is what it is. Did you watch scary movies as a kid? Hell no. I mean, I did, but that's also why I know that I don't like scary movies.
Yeah, I liked them when I was younger.
Yeah.
They were exciting. We took when we went to go get the pumpkins. There was like a little pop-up haunted house at the nursery.
Oh. Yeah.
It was empty, so we just walked through it during the day. And
it's a lot less scary though when the sunlight's peeking through.
It scared the kids.
Yep.
The kids were like, "What is going on?"
The first time. But by the third time, they were fine.
I follow a few woodworkers who really get into making Halloween props. And I look at their Instagram pictures, I'm like, man, why doesn't Marc do this?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with my time, Nicole. Okay, Ryan Murray says, since you've moved away from wiping varnishes, can we expect a hard wax oil shootout video in the future? I'd like to see the differences in performance between most of the brands. Okay. I have trouble explaining why I don't think I'm going to do this. And I was even asking Nicole about this.
Oh, is this the wax thing?
Yeah, earlier today. I was trying to figure out how do I explain this. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons. Number one, some of these companies are really sensitive. I mean that, emotionally.
Yes.
They're really sensitive.
They're very connected to their product.
And holy crap, you say something bad about them, watch out, right? I don't want to be on the receiving end.
Just truthful.
Anything remotely critical, let's put it that way. Most companies that produce products, I think they have a little bit of shielding between the person who created it and the person who deals with the social media. Some of these companies do not do that, right? So it's a quagmire giggity, and I don't know that I necessarily want that in my life.
No.
Reason number two, a lot of these finishes are very, very specific about how you apply them. In fact, if you simply apply them based on the instructions and then you get a bad result, someone from that company will tell you that you applied it incorrectly. And then someone else on the internet will tell you, oh, well, what you needed to do was use a 16th inch nap roller and this and blah, 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 blah. There's like 100 ways to apply these things. The thing is, most of these finishes are from the flooring and building industry. So when we apply them to furniture, in a lot of cases, furniture makers are left trying to figure it out. So everybody kind of has their own system. You got people who sand to 1,000 grit before they apply it. Then you got someone who only sands to 220. So when you're to do a test like this, there has to be some kind of consistency in how we apply it across the board so we can compare the finishes fairly, right? That's really difficult to do in the world of hard wax oil finishes. And the third reason is because hard wax oil finishes as a category are not incredibly protective. They are not a thick layer of film, going on top of the wood. So they are a class of finishes where the results in terms of protection, durability, all that stuff are kind of all the same, right? They all have maybe a little bit of a difference between them. Some you might be able to build a little bit of thicker finish of wax on there. Some just maybe a very in the wood grain sort of finish, but they all fall into a category of not very protective finishes. And I mean that in terms of film versus no film, right?
But could you compare them side by side of just what they are?
Yes, like if someone was just curious
Like
what makes Osmo a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could certainly do that. But when people are asking about durability, how long does it take to, before you have to reapply some of the finish? This is all, a lot of it is just steeped in mystery and how it's applied. And then you do it one way and someone's going to tell you, well, the reason you got that result was because you applied it incorrectly. I don't want any part of that.
Well, Jack said that the good part is about your shootouts, you are the control. We can't afford to buy the multiples and test them. So
right, but what I'm telling you right now is all of these decent hard wax oils, I'm going to tell you basically your Osmos, your Rubios, your Odie's oil, anything that's in that hard wax oil family is going to be about the same in terms of protection, durability, reapplication, because that's what the class of finishes is all about. Right? So it's just, there's not as much variability between those finishes. So I'll think about it. I'll continue to think about it. It's something that is definitely something I would do, right? It's something that I typically do.
Put your cup on and get ready.
But yeah, that literally is like, all right, boys, hit me in the nuts. Because if it's not from the companies,
it's going to be for the fans.
It would be from the people watching the videos.
Yeah. I mean, we still get like the dust collection shootout that you did.
Yeah.
Well,
and the thing is, if I could just describe it in a way that makes any kind of sense here, it's like doing a finish shootout between pure oils, right? Tung oil versus boiled linseed oil versus, I don't know, maybe a polymerized tung oil or something. It's not a very exciting test because they're all oil. They all do about the same thing, you know what I mean? So that we've dialed down so far into a niche that there's just not much variability to make these products different from one another, right? So I don't know. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. It's all right.
And what you're hearing from me is the voice of frustration, because a lot of these companies are very good about putting out information about how to apply these things to furniture. You actually find out more talking to users to see what they actually do. Right? If you listen to Rubio, they're going to tell you to stop sanding at 150. Well, the day I send a project out of my shop sanded at 150 is the day pigs fly out of my butt, Nicole. Not going to do it. I sand at 180. Things are fine, right? So, let's get some consensus for how to apply these things on furniture.
Gazank said Odie's oil had their instructions written by the people who wrote the unwritten rules of baseball.
Yeah. Well, that's where I found that lesson out the hard way.
Yes, you did.
I said, I just followed the instructions on the bottle. Well, you're an idiot. It's like, oh, okay.
Justin says, about 6 months ago, I decided to build a loft bed and mistakenly used construction lumber to build it.
Oh, boy.
My question is the project ruined because I used green construction lumber? I hope not.
Maybe. You just got to see. You got to see what's going to happen. It's going to dry. It's going to...
The problem I have, it's a loft bed. So is there any chance that it could come apart?
Possibly, but it's secured. I mean, decks are made with
that's true.
wet lumber, right? And we still stand on them. So it's certainly possible that it could develop problems. You're going to have to watch it. And I would watch any hardware you use to make sure everything is nice and snug and safe.
Would it push out like a deck?
No, it'll just shrink, right?
Okay.
And what'll happen is the hardware will get loose. If there's any joinery in there, you might have some issues. You just got to watch it. It could be okay. It might not be okay.
Hey.
I like this title for the show today. Hit me in the nuts.
I don't know. if we could do that.
No, I think we're going to do that.
Okay.
What, we can't do that? Look
I
at our
don't know.
titles. We have the stupidest titles.
Sandy has a question. She's a YouTube member. Thank you,
Where?
Sandy.
Sandy?
Yeah.
Sandy Boone. I built a compact Falk workbench.
Paul.
Paul. No, but it is. It's the Polk workbench.
Okay.
But I didn't. Okay.
Anyway.
I didn't read the name. But it's called the Polk workbench.
Okay.
With the dog holes. For the top, I sandwiched 1/2-inch Luan plywood on top of sheeting. Holdfasts dent into the dog holes. The Luan is too soft. Yeah, this goes back to what I was talking about with Kim's question. Sometimes sheet goods and MDF, I was talking about specifically, can actually dent. So if you put metal implements in there, like dogs or holdfasts, you could dent into them and cause them to not really hold very well. You just kind of compress those wood fibers. So yeah, absolutely. Something like Luan could definitely be problematic and could dent under pressure. So yeah, that could very well be the situation you're dealing with there, Sandy.
You have more Patreon? I got more
I'm
questions.
done with my Patreons.
I got one from Nicholas P. Any tips on how to make a stain or oil finish match between a softwood and an American chestnut? I used a reclaimed softwood newel posts that matched in the design before realizing the post wasn't hardwood.
Well, the whole hardwood versus softwood thing, it kind of just depends on which wood we're talking about. The bottom line is you can't really make woods look like each other unless the grain matches up, right? So if you're trying to make pine look like red oak, it's never really going to happen. Like even if you get the color the same, the grain pattern is such that they're just never going to match. So it kind of depends on which woods you're working with, but making them look like they belong together is always going to be a challenge. Minimally, try to get the colors to look the same. If you need to put a little bit of a dye in there to get the one piece to look a little closer in color, that will help disguise it, but it's never going to make the grain look the way it should. So unfortunately, I don't know that there is a good way to do that, because you're not going to put faux grain lines through it, right? So if the grain doesn't match, you're kind of dead in the water.
Did you get Patrick's question? Did you write about the Mortise Chisels?
Nope. I did have one more question.
Yeah, you did.
So Patrick wants to know, do you recommend buying Mortise Chisels or buy a better set of bench chisels? Well, if you already have a set of bench chisels and they're not garbage, if you can make them sharp and use them, don't buy another set of bench chisels. Get the set of chisels you don't currently have that you might find useful, right? Mortising chisels are really only useful if you're making mortises or you're doing deep sort of cuts where you need that extra meat in that chisel. And mortising chisels are great for that. I have them. I don't really use them that often, but sometimes they're nice to have. So if you think you need mortising chisels, I say get the mortising chisels, keep your other bench chisels nice and sharp, and maybe later on down the road upgrade. I always recommend, this goes for power tools or hand tools, satisfy a function that you don't currently have before you upgrade a function you already have, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Well, thank you, Nicole. I thought a lot about this.
Scott Walsh, do you fall victim to temporary projects becoming permanent? I'm making a better temporary router table now to replace my really bad temporary router plank. I'm worried it'll become permanent.
No.
There you go. Sorry, Scott.
I actually don't do temporary things.
No.
I will do permanent things and change my mind.
Sure.
Or my needs change, and then I have to do something to undo that and redo it later. But I don't think I have ever built something with the thought that it was just a temporary solution. Because what happens with temporary solutions is they're usually half-assed.
Well, and like you said, they kind of become permanent.
But then now you live with a half-assed solution.
Right.
That's the reason you did
well,
it
the
temporarily.
DIY desk was kind of that, a temporary solution.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to throw them in the garbage when they're not being used anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to put them in the burn pile. So I usually don't do that. If I'm going to take the time to build a thing for a purpose, I'd really rather just take my time to build it correctly and build it so it is not a temporary solution. Okay, one example, the base on my outfeed table, right there, Nicole.
Yep.
I built that in the Arizona shop,
Yeah.
and I knew I wanted to build something ideally with doors and drawers, something with lots of good storage, but instead I just kind of put this plywood framework together, which just had kind of cubbies in it, And it is the most useless storage solution ever. It does nothing for me. So I think at the time, I kind of was like, well, this is a quick, simple solution. I don't know if I need more than this. But in the back of my mind, I knew I really should have built something more substantial, and I didn't. And meanwhile, I still use it, but it is absolutely useless. It's so much wasted storage space. So that is an exception to that, that I actually did do something like that. And I'm not happy about it. And I will be replacing it.
Matthew Lee.
Matthew
I always mispronounce his name.
Lee, Nicole.
Lee.
Look, me and Matthew know how it's pronounced, and that's all that matters.
Okay.
He says, I just got a lunchbox thicknesser with a helical head. What's the best way to test it out and make sure it's performing like it should? Well, I'm going to give you the smart-ass answer here, Matthew. I would say put a piece of wood through it. Put a piece of wood through it and see what happens, right? I mean, from the factory, it should be ready to go. But what you're basically checking, kind of like I mentioned on a thickness planer discussion, throw a piece in and then maybe don't change the setting, but run it through on the other side and see what happens. If you find that it's like chewing up a little bit more on one side than the other, then maybe it needs some kind of an adjustment. But most of the time, those lunchbox planers, do they have adjustments like that? I don't think they do.
So Matthew asked the question, and Pete's Shop Makes just said use it. And then he's like, I'm sorry if that came off rude. I'm like, no, that's exactly what Marc just said. So Pete,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that came off rude, but I'm kind of rude. Yeah, honestly, man, you just got to try it out. Get your dust collection set on there. Make sure you have a nice jointed board that's got a jointed face. Put that face down and put a light pass through there. And if it planes just fine, everything looks good, you're good to go.
You're good to go.
It's ready to roll, baby.
I know that that went off, but I have a few questions.
Okay,
Lawrence says, any thoughts on Woodpecker's new rip-flip system fence stop system?
What in the hell?
We haven't gotten that from Woodpeckers. Usually they'll send us. Is it a one-time? I wonder if it's a one-time tool.
Woodpecker's flip and rip and stop.
Flip.
That's the track flip stop.
Flip stop. That's what it says.
Okay.
Is it a one-time tool?
Super track flip stop? No, that doesn't sound like.
Huh.
Rip and flip?
He said that it was the rip and flip and.
The flip and rippin'?
The rip flip system fence stop system.
the flip rip. Yeah, they're good with these names.
Yeah. There it is.
I hear it's flippin' brilliant, according to the advertisements. So this is it's a stop system for the table saw.
Gotcha.
Okay. I don't know nothing about it, yo.
No nothing? Nothing?
I don't know nothing about it, yo. What I do know is that on my particular table saw...
Only for the saw stop currently, Pat says.
Okay. Well, that makes sense because they got to kind of... It looks like it goes under the bar.
Gotcha.
What I will say, though, and just to give you an idea what this thing does, it's a stop that's on the base, the back end, the user side of the table saw fence. So as you move your saw fence over, you hit those stops, lock it in place, and you can make fine adjustments. Mm-hmm. Fine adjustments at the table saw are great if you can get them to work properly. One of the problems I would have on mine is the way that the cam handle works on mine. A lot of times, if I have a setting here at the base, it's not until the handle engages that my fence, finds its actual straight point. So I'm not sure how well this would work because I could go right up against that stop, but as soon as I tighten down my handle, my fence will straighten out, and then I find what the true setting is, and I may move away from that stop. So I could probably, I'd have to see if there's a way to get some of that slop out of my fence, but I have a point where if I tighten it too much, then I can't slide it back and forth. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. I think that's going to be the wild card with this.
Oh, it's an introductory price. I was thinking it was a one-time tool.
No. So I think that's the wild card with this and why it's probably smart for them to only put this thing on a saw stop because they have control over the system. Gotcha. And the saw stop fence maybe works better than my fence does. Man, I got to tell you though, look at all those knobs and things on there.
I'm looking at one.
That's a lot of business, Nicole. Oh, you little so-and-so. That's a lot of knobs and handles to be hanging from your table saw fence. Watch your zippers, guys. Might get your fly caught on there. Anyway, in other words, I don't know anything about it, and I don't have a saw stop, so
Yeah, that's why they'll never send you
you're
one.
not going to see one here. Okay.
No, Olive Press wanted to know if getting a domino was worth it for a hobbyist instead of getting a high-end doweling jig.
Yeah, absolutely. Screw dowels. I mean, if you're going to put $400, $500 into a doweling jig, just get the domino. It's going to save you tons of time.
You're going to enjoy it more.
Well, and a lot of people, there's so many different mindsets for this stuff. Oh, hobbyists don't need a domino, right? Why would they need a domino? Well, sometimes hobbyists have a very small amount of time, and getting a domino is what allows them to actually make furniture instead of just worrying about setting up routers and stuff like that. So I actually do think the domino would be a good choice. Nothing wrong with doweling jigs, but I think if you're going to go for a premium doweling jig, you're like usually more than halfway there to a domino. Just go for the domino. You'll be much happier if the budget is there.
Jack, we'll answer your question over at the after show.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody.
I'll put the link for the Patreon supporters. We have an after show where we're a little bit more casual.
Yeah.
Not as many
Because
woodworking.
we're totally not casual right now.
Well, we tend to focus on woodworking here.
It's a little off topic in the after show. That's for $5 level people and higher if you're interested in that. Members on YouTube and also on patreon.com/woodwhisperer. And we will see you in a couple of minutes. Oh, twwstore.com. Get your t-shirts.
Get your t-shirts.
You got till the end of the month to get those pre-orders in. So
are we gonna? Somebody asked about the Bazinga shirt. Are we gonna do that later?
I told my mom I want to do it, but it's not in this current initial lineup. Okay. But every time I wear it, I get people saying they want it. So
sure,
we'll do it. We will. Right. Okay, we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Have a great day.
Peace out. Bye-bye.